All right.
Hey,
Thank
take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Wayne. And I want to thank everyone affiliated with Pasadena Village for having me be your guest today. It's a great honor to be with you all, and I've heard such great things about Pasadena Village. So when I heard that I might have the opportunity to speak with you all, I was very excited. Yeah, so today I'm going to be speaking about brain health and what we can do to keep our brains healthy as we grow older. I know that's a topic that's near and dear to all of us because we all will get older. There's not a single exception to that rule. And I am speaking as a clinical neuropsychologist. And so what that means is that I am trained to see patients and evaluate their thinking skills. So their memory problem or their memory, their ability to pay attention, to see visual objects, to use language, and certain motor functions. And that typically is used to help diagnose something like early dementia or early Alzheimer's disease. And so it's from that experience and expertise that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Some tips about how we can maintain our brain health as we grow older. And I'm going to do this in the context or the structure of dispelling myths about brain health, because I've found that that seems to be a way that grabs people's attention. So hopefully this will work, and we'll just go on ahead. So the first myth that I'm going to talk about is that cognitive decline is an inevitable part of aging. So a lot of people think that as we grow older, we will all cognitively decline, we'll all get cognitive impairment, and develop Alzheimer's disease or dementia if we grow old enough. And I'm going to say that that's actually a myth. But it's easy to understand why that might be a myth that people believe, because as we grow older, it is true that our brains will change. We will get parts of our brains that will seem to diminish over time. And so this is actually a picture of our brain, and the areas that tend to get a little bit weaker or tend to get a bit smaller as we grow older. And a lot of these regions are in the frontal lobes. The frontal lobes are really important for thinking, certain thinking skills. And it is true that as we grow older, we will have some of our brain decline. It's also true that as we have some of our brain decline, that our thinking skills will also tend to decline to some degree. And so this is actually a picture showing a correlation or a trend between brain thickness, so how thick the brain is, and common cognition, so how thinking skills are. And you can see that as we grow older, it tends to go down a little bit. And that's if you actually consider all the people in the world, all the people getting older at the same time. But what's interesting is that it's actually not the case in every single circumstance. It's actually true that cognitive decline is not an inevitable part of aging, that not every single person is going to experience cognitive decline, actually. And so if you look at very specific brain regions, what you can see is that, and this is actually showing people at the individual level. And what you can see is that certain brain regions tend to decline with age. That's true, but there's a lot of examples of people who actually show increases with age. So there's actually lots of individual examples of people showing increases in their brain regions. And if you actually look at this in a more detailed way, the picture on the left is actually how someone's cognitive ability is over time. You can see there's a lot of variation. These are 100 randomly selected people, and it shows their cognitive ability over time. It shows, that picture actually shows people's cognition about 25 years before they die, actually. And what you can see, there's a lot of variation, there's a lot of up and down, but it doesn't really decline until right before death. There does seem to be a decline, a pretty sharp decline right before death. But other than that, there's just a lot of up and down. And what's interesting is that if you consider all of the things that could go wrong in aging, so things like strokes, things like accumulation of age-related neuropathology, um, if you actually consider those things and take that out of the equation, what you have is actually the picture on the right for cognition. So if you take out all of these things that could go wrong in aging, what you have is a pretty flat line. And so what that tells us is that cognition doesn't necessarily need to go down as we grow older. It's only in the context of when something goes wrong that cognition tends to go down. And so this is actually work from friends of mine in Chicago who work with an Alzheimer's research center. And what they actually came away with was that really late life cognitive loss mainly reflects non-normative, pathologic, and mortality-related processes rather than normative age-related processes. So what does that mean? What are they saying here? What they're saying is that if someone's experiencing significant cognitive decline, it's actually because there's other things at play. There's other things like Alzheimer's disease potentially happening, Lewy body disease, cardiovascular changes, and these are not normal things. These are actually abnormal things. And so as we grow older, the assumption is that as long as we don't have these abnormal things that happen to us, we should be able to think pretty well as we grow older. Now, a lot of us do have things happen to us. Life happens, different physical disease processes happen. And in that context, we experience more cognitive decline. But the fact is that cognitive decline is not inevitable. It generally happens when something wrong is going on. So that's myth one. So myth two, all will experience dementia. And I think we were sharing before I started talking that a number of us have been touched by dementia. I know my own family has been touched by dementia, and it seems very prevalent, and it is. But it's important to keep in mind that it doesn't really impact everyone at the same time. So the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease actually increases with age. So it's about 5% of from age 65 to 74, 14% from age 75 to 84, and then 35% for age 85 plus. So that's a little bit more than a third of the population at age 85 plus. So a lot of the population will not have Alzheimer's disease by older age, and a lot will. The prevalence of mild cognitive impairment, actually, you might be saying, well, okay, maybe if we live long enough, we'll at least have some cognitive impairment. But that's actually also not always the case. And you can see here, as we grow older, it does increase the chance of getting mild cognitive impairment. But by age 80 to 84, it's only about a quarter of us will experience cognitive impairment. And so when I'm talking about cognitive impairment, I'm talking about significant cognitive impairment to the point where it's very noticeable and it's really noticeable in life. And so it's true that we'll all experience some lapses in our attention, our ability to pay attention to multiple things at once. We'll all get a little bit slower as we grow older. And that's all normal. That's actually part of the normal aging process. But not all of us will actually be cognitively impaired as we grow older. And an important note is that a lot of the data that we have on cognitive impairment is actually not very representative. So older Blacks and Hispanics are disproportionately more likely than older whites to have Alzheimer's or other dementias. However, the way that this gets diagnosed is actually using cognitive measures that don't really reflect the same experiences across race. So there's a big push right now in my field to try to get more data, to try to understand how this looks in other different racial groups as well. The truth of the matter is that we really don't know. We really don't understand how this looks in different racial groups. Myth 3, nothing can be done for brain health. And this is the point that I'm going to be talking about for the majority of my talk and most of my talk. It's really a myth because much can be done for brain health. And it is one of the things that I'm going to be speaking out of is this experience of mine on the Global Council for Brain Health. And so I sit on a Global Council for Brain Health that's supported by AARP. And you can look at the materials if you go to this website, www.globalcouncilonbrainhealth.org. And what this group does, what we do is we try to review all of the science and try to understand what are some things that we could do as we get older that can help us maintain or improve our brain health. And you can see here, these are all people you may not recognize, but they're some of the most famous people, much more famous than I am, in the field of Alzheimer's disease research and neurology, psychiatry, from all over the world, actually. And so these are experts that are gathered all over the world. And what we do is we actually try to tackle one topic at a time to see what we can say, what we can give the public, meaning people like you, what we can give as concrete examples of what can be done for brain health based on the scientific literature. So you don't have to read every single scientific paper that's out there yourself. All of the materials that we've worked on are freely available. They're freely downloadable online. If you go to this website, it's hosted by the AARP. And so every single topic has a report that's issued on it. And so I'm going to be going through some general points from some of these reports so I can show you a little bit about what we've done in terms of trying to develop the best advice for brain health as we get older. So far we've done more than 13 reports. These are all the different examples of the reports that we've done. And what's nice is that every single report has an infographic. So it's sort of, every report is very thorough in the way that it's written. And then we boil this down to an infographic. So something sort of that concrete that you could actually take with you. And so I'm just going to walk through some of these just to show you and actually talk about some of these points for brain health. So the first topic that we ever talked about was the brain and body connection. And what we did here was we reviewed recommendations and the science about how physical activity helps support brain health. And we started with this topic because out of all the topics, we have the most scientific evidence for this. We know that the more that you remain or get physically active, the better that is for brain health. And so this is a full report. It's actually many pages long, but some of the examples of consensus statements that we developed are shown here. So for example, physical activity has a positive impact on brain health. That's a very quick and simple statement, but not many people know that. So we wanted to make sure that that was a clear statement. People can change their behavior to become more physically active at any age. And that's the important thing about physical activity. Someone may be wheelchair bound, for example, but they can still generally move some part of their body. And that's maintaining physical activity. Someone may be bed bound and they might be able to just move small parts of their body, but that's still physical activity. So generally speaking, most people can do some sort of physically active activity relative to their health situation at the time. So based on randomized control trials, which is a fancy word for saying experimental studies that have studied this, people who've shown purposeful exercise show beneficial changes in brain structure and function. And so I'll come back to this in a moment. And based on epidemiological evidence, so basically what that means is based on very large studies of many, many people, we know that people who lead a physically active lifestyle have lower risk of cognitive decline. There's actually, the more that you are physically active, the less cognitive decline people tend to experience. And so this is the infographic that was developed for this topic. And you can see here, it just gives you some very concrete steps to actually maintain or improve your brain health. So for example, move throughout the day. So maybe take the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Make concrete plans to move your body. So make actual plans to do some sort of physical activity. Add regular exercise. And this gets a little bit more specific, but this is based on the recommendations from the American Medical Association. You want to try to shoot for about 2.5 hours of aerobic exercise a week, and then 2+ days of strength training, something that will help strengthen your muscles. If that's something, those are goals that people can shoot for. And then do more of what you love or try something new with others. We know that the more that you do something with someone else, the more likely you're going to do that thing, actually. That's based on the research. So I mentioned this increase in brain structure. Is it really true that doing physical activity can actually lead to increases in brain? I showed you pictures of how certain parts of our brain decrease with age. Is it true that physical activity actually increases with age? And so this is a famous study from a world famous researcher whose name is Art Kramer. And he was one of the issue experts that we pulled together when we study this topic. And this study shows that older adults who did an aerobic fitness training program actually showed increases in their brain in the frontal lobes, in the same brain regions that tend to decline with age. So this is actually brain imaging evidence showing that people who are physically active can, it looks like, potentially increase their brain structure and volume. So actually go in the opposite direction of what most people show as we grow older. So that's physical activity. The next topic that we talked about is sleep. Sleep is incredibly important. And I know that as I get older, my sleep gets worse. It just feels like it gets worse the older I get. We also have studied this and have shown, our research has shown, that sleep is incredibly important for maintaining brain health. That sleep is essential for overall physical and mental health and well-being. These are, again, examples of the consensus statements that we developed. There are changes to sleep as people age. It is true that as we grow older, that our sleep does seem to get worse, that there's changes in our sleep. However, people at any age can change their behavior to improve sleep. And then persistent excessive sleepiness is not a normal part of aging. It's an abnormal part of aging. And so what we mean by that is that if someone's really experiencing sleep problems, that's something that should be discussed with a doctor, because that could be something that could be improved. People with chronic inadequate sleep are at higher risk for certain diseases and dementia. And so this is something that sleep researchers know, and we have seen in the research. Some sleep recommendations are to get up at the same time every day, develop a regular sleep-wake schedule if possible, keep the bedroom dark, quiet, and at a comfortable temperature, limit use of bedroom for sleep. So for example, using a device or watching TV right before bed may not be the best, might not be the healthiest for sleep. And also expose yourself to light during the daytime. That's actually really important to help regulate your sleep-wake cycles. Social connectedness is another important thing for brain health. People have done studies showing that the better your social connections are, the less there seems to be cognitive decline. So social engagement is interacting with others, feeling connected to other people, doing purposeful activities with others, maintaining meaningful social relationships. They vary in terms of structure, function, quality. You can have good relationships and bad relationships. The good ones really help a lot. The bad ones seem to not be so helpful. And the weight of evidence suggests that social engagement helps maintain thinking skills and slows cognitive decline in later life. When we convened the issue experts on this topic of social engagement, the epidemiological evidence seems to suggest that the better the social relationships are, the less cognitive decline there seems to happen in older age. So some social engagement recommendations are to join a group, like you all have done with Pasadena Village, which is a great, great group. That's an example of being doing something for your brain health. And so you're already doing it. Get a pet. So some experts felt really strongly about this, that as we grow older, sometimes our social circles tend to get a bit smaller. But if you could get a pet, and that could actually be one way to help maintain social connectedness. Teach someone something. So that actually is that comes from that, and the volunteer or help others come from a very famous study that's based in Baltimore. It's the Baltimore mentoring or the Baltimore aging study, where they showed that older adults who actually took people under their wing tended to have less cognitive decline as they got older. So being a mentor, being a teacher to someone, that seems to be something that seems to protect brain health as we grow older. Use technology to stay connected. And I think we're all doing that right now. We're doing that over Zoom. And so that's something that's another way to maintain social connection. And then share a smile. Just even the act of smile to someone, it elicits a smile back, and that's a positive social interaction. Cognitively stimulating activities. So keeping your mind active is another way we could actually improve brain health. So this is a big wordy way of saying, I'm just going to tell you that the more that we maintain and keep our brain active, the more that seems to reduce cognitive decline as we grow older. So some people actually do this through work, through participating in a volunteer group like you all are, learning a new skill, engaging in a leisure activity that's mentally challenging. All of these things are good. My father just discovered Sudoku, and he plays Sudoku nonstop all the time now. So that's a great example of keeping your brain active, being cognitively active. One thing that we did want to say is that there's a lot of brain games that are marketed out there that basically claim that they will help you not develop Alzheimer's disease if you play their game. And generally speaking, when we review the scientific evidence, there's not really a single game that you pay for out there that can really help stop Alzheimer's disease. So I just wanted to make that clear. Keeping your brain active is really good, but if someone's trying to sell you a game and claiming that it's gonna stop Alzheimer's disease, that claim is a little bit too much. There's nothing that really does that yet that we can find. Okay. So in terms of the infographic, this is what it looks like. So tip 1, find something that challenges the way you think, that keeps your mind engaged and active. Mental engagement and physical exercise could be a good way to combine two things. We know that physical activity helps. If you combine that with mental engagement, something that you have to think, like playing a new sport or doing something like that, that could actually be a good combination activity. And then also a social engagement and greater purpose. So if there's something that keeps you socially engaged and also keeps your mind active, that's also a great win-win. So that's cognitive activity. Food. So one of the most common questions we get is, what about diet? Does your diet matter when it comes to brain health? And in general, I'm going to tell you, yes, it does. We know from the epidemiologic studies that long-term healthy eating seems to be associated with less cognitive decline, meaning the better you eat, the better foods you eat, the more healthier you eat, that seems to be associated with less cognitive decline as we grow older. Typically, the Western diet that's high in salt, sugar, and excess calories and saturated fats is not good for your brain. People have talked a lot about the Mediterranean diet or the DASH diet or the MIND diet or the Nordic diet. There's lots of different diets, but the general premise is that the healthier that you eat, the better it is for your brain. No single food acts as a silver bullet. So it's not like you can take a pill, for example, and just make everything better. Generally speaking, a healthy, balanced diet that's low in salt, sugar, and excess fat seems to be good for your brain. So these are some healthy tips. Try to drink more water, not soda. Try to eat a salad when you can. Eat more fish instead of meat. Cook with olive oil instead of butter. These are all different choices that people can make that are very practical, that seem to potentially make a good difference when it comes to brain health. Mental well-being. So your psychological well-being is also important. And so this is also based on the literature as well. We know that experiencing a full range of emotions is part of being human, but that the better emotional state that you are in, that seems to be associated with reduced dementia risk. So anything that you can do to maintain your emotional well-being will also be something that will help maintain your cognition. So, and that could be lots of different things. So that could be seeking out group support, like you again are all doing for Pasadena Village. It could be just finding time to relax and rest if you are really in a busy, stressful time of your life. Also just building friendships, discovering new things, whatever helps you emotionally, that tends to actually be associated with lower cognitive decline as we grow older. One of our council members, Ron Peterson, who is a famous Alzheimer's researcher, really wanted to tackle this issue of supplements because he said that patients always ask, are there supplements? Is there some sort of vitamin or something that we can take that would help actually stave off or prevent Alzheimer's disease? And in general, we reviewed the evidence, we reviewed everything that's out there, and there is insufficient evidence that multivitamins or any sort of supplement that you can take will improve brain health. I'm not saying that it's not not going to be harmful. I'm not saying that anything that you take will be harmful. It just doesn't seem to be the case that any particular supplement is actually something that will help at this point. So there's a lot of different supplements out there that are making claims that it's going to help prevent Alzheimer's disease, for example. Generally speaking, there's nothing that we found that's out there that helps do that. Supplements can be good, particularly if there's a vitamin deficiency. If there are certain vitamins that you don't have enough of in your body, you should take vitamins then in that case. But just because you're taking a vitamin doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help prevent Alzheimer's disease. There's nothing that we found that actually does that yet. If someone's telling you, that they have a pill that you can buy that will help prevent Alzheimer's disease, they're going too far. And so that's something that I just wanted to make clear. Okay. So you can see here the infographic that AARP developed, and you can see it's kind of funny. It says "Save your money, honey," because there's no supplement again that will help prevent Alzheimer's disease. It's too good of a claim to be true if that's the case. And that's based on our review of the scientific literature at this point. Lots of supplement companies will try to sell you something, sell claims, but there's nothing really for brain health that seems to be something that really does a big deal at this point. So, okay. The heart is really important. And so we talked about this as well. Cardiovascular risks are something that will help. If you maintain your cardiovascular health, that will help your brain. And things that are not good for your cardiovascular health will actually result in worse cognition or poorer cognition in time. So the catchphrase that doctors pass around all the time, which is actually a catchy one, and I think it's helpful in this case, is what is good for the heart is good for your brain. What is good for your heart is good for your brain. And that's because our brain is made up of lots of different blood vessels. And those blood vessels, if they're clean and if they're healthy, will help support the brain. So keeping your heart and blood vessels healthy reduces your risk for cognitive decline and dementia. So things that are not good for your heart, so things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, smoking, not being physically active, obesity, those are all bad for brain health. And there's lots of studies to show those links. So damage to your brain from cardiovascular risk can accumulate over time, but it's never too late to improve your risk of cognitive impairment by improving your cardiovascular health. So again, what's good for your heart is good for your brain. And these are just different ways that we can help do that. We could stay active, don't smoke, check your blood pressure and cholesterol regularly, manage your blood sugar levels, sleep well, because that does actually have an impact. Your sleeping has an impact on your heart health. And then eat healthy as well, because that obviously has an impact on your heart health. So one of the other members of the Global Council also felt strongly about talking about delirium. And delirium is something that is not very well known among the public. And so I'm just going to explain to you what delirium is. So delirium is a situation where someone can actually seem like they're very demented because they had a very severe change in their physical health at a given time. So we typically see delirium, for example, if someone's coming into the emergency room. If someone's coming into the emergency room and they're an older person, sometimes that complete change in health or complete change in environment can result in something that's called a delirium. And a delirium is something that actually looks like a dementia, but it's different than a dementia. It could be just very, very transient, or it could be just very temporary because of the change in medical condition. Delirium could be damaging if it's not addressed well. And so that's something, that's why it's often overlooked or misdiagnosed or improperly managed. So the point here is that a person can develop a delirium after an injury, a major illness, surgery, dehydration, infection, or changes in medications. And it looks like a dementia, but it's not a dementia. And so so that's important to know the difference, because the delirium could potentially go away, or it could improve if the injury or the illness or the dehydration is dealt with. You don't want someone with a delirium given a diagnosis of dementia, even though that person might look like they have dementia, when there's something that could be done to help improve that situation. And that delirium would go away then if that situation improves. This is something that happens actually to many older adults when they come into the ER or into a surgical situation. And again, it could happen suddenly. It could actually just happen all of a sudden. And it can be very worrisome to family members to see this. And the assumption might be that this person has a dementia, but it's not a dementia, it's a delirium. And that's something that could be treated and addressed and made better. So delirium could harm the brain if it goes on and is not treated well. Again, delirium is a sudden change in thinking and behavior. And it often happens to older adults following hospital admission. it particularly happens for some reason after hospital admission. Symptoms can come and go quickly. They can include confusion, personality changes, hallucinations, diet and sleep disruptions, rambling speech, and often it's misdiagnosed as a dementia, but it's delirium. And that's important for people to know and to be treated so that it's treated in the right way. So these are some tips for individuals and tips for caregivers. Actually, a lot of doctors sometimes miss this, actually. And so if people don't know much about geriatrics, for example, they might see a delirium and diagnose it as a dementia. But that's a misdiagnosis in that case. And so that's why we gave tips for individuals, but also for caregivers, also for physicians as well, to be on the lookout for this. Music is one of the more recent topics that we talked about. So music is something that actually does seem to be good for our brains, generally speaking. It's a powerful way to stimulate your brain. People with very severe dementia, for example, when music comes on, people talk about how people with severe dementia sometimes feel like, or it looks like they're coming alive again in some ways, just responding to the music. It engages multiple parts of the brain and helps them to work together. And all of those parts of the brain help stimulate things like movement, attention, language, emotion, thinking skills. So it is a powerful brain stimulating thing. Music can help people recall meaningful memories and emotions, actually. And so it's often the case people have memories come to mind with music. And so generally speaking, music, it seems like a positive thing. And so we generally say, if people enjoy music, they should keep enjoying music because it seems to be good for the brain. It can also be involved in dancing or singing. So those are that physical activity things. If people like to move to music, that's physical activity. We also talk about hearing loss. That's very common as we grow older, and it's important to get that checked out. It seems to be the case that hearing loss, there's a lot of research happening right now showing that that could be something that is linked to cognitive decline. So it's important to stay on top of hearing loss and try to get it checked out and treated. But music in general seems like a very positive thing. We have less research about music than we do something like physical activity. So there needs to be more research about the positive aspects, potential positive aspects of music, but it does seem to be a positive thing. During COVID, we actually put out a report basically saying that it's important to try to address COVID. And there's a lot of research right now coming out about its brain implications as well. So our basic consensus, and this was in the middle of the pandemic, is consider getting the vaccine if you haven't. That's something that we're all very much in support of and advocate for. And also don't put off any necessary medical appointments. It was the case early on in the pandemic that older adults were reluctant to go see doctors, but we really do recommend maintaining medical appointments because that's something that is important for brain health. So these are the recommendations here, and you can see those. And then our most recent topic is how to sustain brain healthy behavior. So you may be hearing all of this and thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but how am I going to do this? Every time I try to put some of this into practice, it never sticks. And that's what we tried to tackle in this most recent report. And when we convened experts from all over the world about this topic, how do we do behavior change? How do we make brain health a behavior change important thing? We heard that it's important not only to hear knowledge about the topic, but also to address motivation and confidence. That it's not enough just to hear what you need to do and learn that. Someone needs to be motivated to make a change, and that person also needs to have confidence that they can make that change. And so those are three important things that we tackled and we heard from the experts that need to happen if people want to make changes for their brain health in a positive direction. Basically, this behavior change report, we've developed 6 pillars of brain health, and basically have sort of boiled down everything that I've talked about to 6 things. Where if you do these 6 things, essentially you're going to be on the right track. And this is our way of saying, okay, if it's all too much to talk about, if it's all too much to take on, concentrate on these 6 things here. So first one is be social. Second, engage your brain. Third is manage stress. Fourth is ongoing exercise. Fifth is sleep. And 6th is eat right. So if you focus on those 6 things that will fit under those 6 things, you're generally going to be on the right track for maintaining brain health as we grow older. There's a lot that can be done for brain health. And the Lancet Commission is a famous meeting of experts from around the world where they talked about what can be done to help prevent dementia. And what they came away with was a really striking statement. They said that together, 12 modifiable risk factors account for about 40% of the worldwide dementias. So what that means is that 40% of dementia in the world can be stopped by just addressing these 12 or these modifiable risk factors, things that you can do something about. The rest is sort of unknown. It might be genetics, might be other sorts of things at play, but 40% of the worldwide dementias could be stopped with just making some changes to help promote brain health. And that's actually a really striking statement. It actually made a lot of headlines when it came out. It was all over the news. 40% of dementia can be stopped just by things that you can do, that you can change in your life. And it was a pretty striking statement. So in summary, cognitive decline is not inevitable. Not everyone will experience dementia, and much can be done to promote brain health in aging and reduce risk of dementia. So it was mentioned, I run a research lab, and we have a number of studies going on. And I just wanted to mention, this is a picture of our lab at a recent launch. We're all, I think, very nice people. If anyone's interested in participating in our research studies, feel free to reach out to us. I think a number of us are on this call, and we'd love to talk to you more about that if that's of interest. And then otherwise, that's all I have to share with you today. So I'm happy to entertain any and all questions about brain health, anything that you've ever been wondering, feel free to ask.
Okay, so if you want to speak, just go ahead and speak up. You'll have to unmute yourself first.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Lindsay.
Yeah, is there research on the connection between brain health and attention deficit disorder?
So there's a little bit of research, actually. And I actually don't know, I'm not the best person to talk to about that, because attention deficit disorder in my field, for better or worse, people tend to focus either on older adulthood or younger adulthood. And people who focus on younger adulthood really focus on ADHD. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of interaction between these two groups. But from the very little that I know, it does seem to be the case that ADHD might be associated with some cognitive problems in later life. I don't know if others in my lab actually know about. Aaron, do you know anything about that? Actually, no. Okay. I don't know much, but the little research I know does seem to make some link that there could be more problems in later life.
Yeah, it does accelerate. I am serious ADHD, and
Okay.
luckily when I was growing up, they didn't know what it was, and so with the hyperactivity that goes along with it and so forth. So at least I was not medicated to death,
I see. Okay.
with all that stuff. But I notice as I age, I noticed that I have to be really, really careful,
I
uh,
see.
because
Yeah.
you are absolutely correct in that it does increase with age. There's,
Yeah.
I mean, speaking from my own personal experience anyway. So
Okay. Yeah. No, thanks. Thanks for sharing. Barbara, I see your hand up actually.
Yes, thinking about resources.
Uh,
Where, aside from going to your family doctor, where can one go for such an assessment about cognitive decline? If there's,
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a neuropsychologist, and so you can go see someone that is a clinical neuropsychologist. And lots of the hospitals, the local hospitals, have a group where they do clinical neuropsychological evaluations or assessments. And it depends on your medical system how who you would talk to about that. Often we're in departments of neurology or departments of psychiatry or psychology. I'm in a department of family medicine, which is a bit of a rare department for that. Oh, geriatrics is also another one. So anything where there's a geriatrics section, they should have someone that can do some testing that can help.
so you don't have a specific resource that you would recommend for someone?
So your USC does have neuropsychology in the neurology department. So they see a lot of patients actually. So if that's something that's of interest, then you can go there.
Is a referral required?
No. Yeah, just you can just go and contact the neurology department and just say you're interested in a neuropsychological assessment, and they'll see that. I actually don't see anyone myself. I used to have a clinic where we would see people for evaluations, and I would be happy to in your case, but I don't have a clinic anymore. So I unfortunately don't have that opportunity for people, but the neurology department does actually do that.
Thank you.
Yep, it's Al. I see your hand up. Yep. I think you're muted, Al.
Did that make me come through?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You said to limit red meat in the diet. What in red meat is the problem? You know.
So there's a lot of fat in red meat that could accumulate in the blood vessels if it's eaten in an extreme amount, actually. And so I think that's the major potential risk for red meat is the fat involved in it, and also the cholesterol. It could increase your cholesterol as well. Yeah, everything's fine in moderation. It's just typically if you had the choice between red meat and fish, for example, fish is a healthier option than red meat.
I tend to do fish, chicken, vegan, red meat, a little bit of each week. So
great, sounds great.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
I did just want to mention, I used to work in geriatrics as a social worker at Kaiser.
Oh, great.
And I know that one of the most common causes of delirium was a urinary tract infection.
Yes.
And oftentimes families would call and say, she was fine yesterday and today she's totally wacko. And that was a dead ringer for a UTI. And sure enough, they would test positive and then have to be treated. And then they were back to where they were. Another experience I had was visiting a woman at home who was very confused. And she had just lost her longtime dog who had just died. But I didn't connect the two. I just thought she must be living in this apartment with her dog and slowly becoming more demented. Well, I did my usual interventions, and then I went back to see her a month later, and she was a completely different woman, totally normal. And after talking to her for a while, it became apparent that she had gone into deep grief after her dog died.
Yeah.
Because the two of them were all I had, and the grief had caused her to become delirious. temporarily delirious. So she snapped out of it as the grief dissipated.
Yeah, no, that's a great illustration of how delirium can come about from, at a place where you don't realize or you might not expect it. And grief is absolutely a potential cause of delirium that I've seen as well. Any other?
I actually saw that happen with another lady after her husband died. She just went off the deep end.
Yeah.
And it took her a while to stabilize. And I mean, she was in the hospital accusing the nurses upstairs were running a brothel and and all these crazy stories.
Yeah.
And then eventually she snapped back. She snapped out of it.
Dr. Hunt, could you put that slide back on in the summary? It's be social, engage, or whatever. There's some 6 or 7 basic things. I mean, they're common to what we, but I just thought I could put that on the refrigerator door.
Yeah, for the social connectedness
Yeah,
one?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that- okay, let me see if
no,
I
the-
can find. Oh, oh, the 6
Yeah,
pillars.
yeah.
Actually, I see. Yeah, and I can bring that up here. And there you go. And hopefully that's helpful for you. And again, these are all freely downloadable if you go to globalcouncilonbrainhealth.org. We've all tried to make sure that everything we do is freely accessible, freely downloadable. You don't have to even be a member of AARP. You could just go to the website and download everything. You'll be able to get the PDFs and the pictures of everything that I showed you today. And a lot more actually information on each of the topics is there as well. Yeah, our mandate, what we were asked to do was try to make this as simple and as easy for the public to get all the best information out there in a free, easy to download place. So
the website is www.globalcouncilbrainhealth.org.
yeah, globalcouncilonbrainhealth.org. globalcouncilonbrainhealth.org. Everything that I showed you and more is there, and you can download it for free. You don't have to be a member of AARP. Anyone around the world can download it for free.
Well, so far it looks like the village is addressing most of these pillars.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the only one we don't address directly is restorative sleep. And we try to, we actually have a couple of dining out groups and we try to investigate different restaurants, and it seems like most of them are pretty healthy.
Great.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Okay, I'm just going to bring this down. Thank you so much again for letting me be a part of your group. It's really a special group, and I heard a lot about you, so I was really excited to be here with you all. Thank you for talking with Laura from my lab, and if you have any questions or ever want me to come back, very happy to anytime.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Hahn, or Duke.
Yeah, please call me Duke.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you all at the next presentation.
All right.
Bye
Thank you all.
all.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye,
Okay,
thank
bye.
you.
Okay, stop recording.